So your Lusitano, does he buck? Is he a Bronco? Nah. But here's a Bronco Sport, in fact, that looks like an ice cream truck. So welcome to the equine edition of the 2023 Ford Bronco Sport Heritage Edition. Curious? So am I. Let's have a look. I tell you, that Lusitano horse, he's a good boy. He's a very good boy. He's a gentleman. Not a wild, untamed thing like this Bronco. But you know, it's kind of hard to consider this Bronco Sport to be a wild, untamed thing when it really does have this color, which is, I believe, robin's egg blue. Robin's egg blue. But this is one of the two members of the new Bronco family. As you probably know, there's the regular Bronco, which is kind of a direct competitor to the Jeep Wrangler. And this is like a little more off-road worthy version of a mid-sized not mid-sized, a compact SUV. It is a unibody construction as opposed to a body-on-frame construction like the other Bronco. But the Bronco Sport is much more automotively similar to a car. You can't really call it, well, you can call it a crossover if you want, because it does have that kind of a chassis. Its closest relative actually is the Ford Escape. But this is a special model in that it's kind of paying homage to the original Ford Bronco. And you know, the original Ford Broncos back in the 60s was a real boxy looking thing. And it was colored a lot of different ways when you could first buy these things that were a bit odd in my opinion. I was but a very young child when it came out. But Ford decided for whatever reason to make it available in all kinds of different colors and all kinds of different configurations. The original Bronco had all kinds of things you could do that were very similar to a Jeep. And the Jeep at the time was basically the CJ5, CJ7, if I remember correctly. The Wrangler had not officially appeared, but it's, you know, the same version, same thing basically, in Jeepdom. So on the original Bronco, you could take the doors off, you could take the top down, you could get a soft top. There are all kinds of variations. And it also had a very interesting suspension in that the front suspension, it was a live axles front and back, just like a Jeep. But the front suspension had what was called a monobeam front suspension because it didn't have leaf springs, it had coil springs. And very compact, not as, well, I'll look at it this way. This is a fairly compact vehicle, but I still think I'll have to compare the wheelbases on it. But this particular animal had a wheelbase of, well, let's check this out here. What was the wheelbase on that old one? I want to say it was under 100 inches. It may have been, may have not. But this one, the wheelbase is 105 inches. And it also has something that the original did not have, which is 4 doors. And a little bit different kind of hatchback situation too. You have a regular liftgate on the back of it that you can also open the window by itself and just tilt it up. It doesn't go down into the tailgate situation like, say, a 4Runner does. But it's pretty versatile having that the ability to open that window back there. But this only comes as a 4-door, unlike the other side of the Bronco, the more athletically off-roady Bronco, which you can get in 2 doors or 4 doors. And if you take a look at this thing, I don't know why, you know, I swear I had a good humor man that used to drive around in my neighborhood back when I was a kid that had a vehicle that was this color. It was white with that robin's eggs blue, and it had a little tune it used to play. Came around and bring that ice cream to all us children. Boy, those were the days, huh? You don't see that much anymore. But, so what is this thing like? Well, it's real interesting because it, like I said, unlike all the competition, and I want to say like the Honda CR-V, the RAV4, the Hyundai, which one's got the Taos? Is that there or is it, wait a minute, Taos, that's the Volkswagen. And the, the Hyundai is the Tucson, I believe, all these towns. But that's what the competition basically looks like. On the GM side, that would probably be the Equinox, which is much, much more car-ish in its appearance. But when you get right down to it, the construction of these vehicles is all pretty much the same. It's all a unibody with a fully independent suspension and an all-wheel drive system. And most of the time, for fuel economy purposes, it's a front driver, and the rear wheels kick in when they need to. This is the opposite of the, like I say, we're talking to Bronco Sport. The regular new Bronco is mainly a rear-wheel drive vehicle. It's much more of a truck pickup base sort of thing, and much more rugged, and has more ground clearance and everything else. But this is like a little bit of a step up from the immediate competition that I mentioned earlier. Although, oh, I forgot the Subaru Forester. Sorry, Subaru Forester. Because that's one of the class leaders that people actually absolutely love that vehicle. And you got all these other versions of these vehicles now that have a little bit more ground clearance and have much more athletic tires, which I'm going to show you in just a minute, the tires on this thing. To make it, there's another one I forgot about, and that's the Jeep Renegade. The Renegade is a little smaller than this, but it also has the trail rated version of it, the Trailhawk, that is very similar in that it's a unibody construction, kind of a car-based SUV, but they've done things to it to make it, put it this way, it can get you further down the trail than the regular Renegade can. And it's the same thing with this particular Bronco Sport. It is equipped with a little bit more goodies on it to allow you to do a little bit more off-roading. And if you have to get really serious with your off-roading, then they would point you towards the Bronco if you're a Ford aficionado. So there you go. So let's take a little closer look at all this, shall we? There's so much to see. It's got an engine in it and everything, and I'm going to show it to you. Well, I tell you what, no matter what the angle, it still looks like an ice cream truck. A good humor, if you will. But what we have under the hood of our Bronco Sport Heritage Edition is becoming very familiar to everybody these days. It's a 2-liter turbocharged engine. More and more manufacturers are using this displacement turbocharged in their more compact vehicles. So it's getting popular. This particular one is fairly potent. If I will snake over here and get my notes for you. What we have is 250 horsepower at 5,500 RPM, fairly high up for a turbo actually. And the torque is 277 pounds of feet at 3,000 RPM. So it's a potent little power plant. The regular Bronco's got like a 1.5 liter triple, and this is of course a 4-cylinder. As you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 cylinders. And the turbocharger, well, first of all, as we approach the vehicle from the front, you will see the intake side. It's all plastic composite, by the way, just like everybody else is doing nowadays, instead of metal, which is not good for car fires, but fortunately these things don't catch on fire very often, I don't think. But this is our intake side, and it is, of course, fed by the turbocharging system. Now here's our air cleaner. Here's the air that goes in and goes onto the back of the engine, and that goes into the turbocharging array, which comes out of the exhaust manifold. This thing is really crammed in here. It's not a real easy engine to show you around on because it's packed into this engine bay. I don't think they could, well, manufacturers can always find a way to put bigger engines in it, but this is really stuffed in here. And anyway, the turbocharging comes around and comes all the way underneath. Somewhere in this mess down in here is your intercool inlet, which means we have an intercooler. I believe it's part of the radiator array, and that cools the compressed air that comes out of the turbocharger that then feeds into here, into these guys, and directly into the cylinders to develop all that lovely horsepower. So, so far in driving it, it seems like a very smooth runner, and the nice part about it is, like so many of these new turbocharged engines, it has a nice linear delivery of power. It's not like a whole bunch of peaky hittiness when you get up to the higher RPMs once the turbo has had a chance to spin up. It seems to overall be a very balanced engine, giving the impression that maybe you have something under the hood that's larger than the displacement would indicate, and not turbocharged. But there are parts of the rev range where it definitely feels like you're getting a hit of power. And it's not what I would describe as the most quiet and refined engine out there, but it's good. It's not bad. But this is the way we live in, and it's all, of course, in the service of developing the maximum amount of power at reasonable fuel economy, which the thing is, though, the competition in this particular class of compact SUV is mainly getting about the same mileage this does, roughly 25 miles per gallon overall, except for things like the RAV4 hybrid, which gets nearly twice that on a good day. So it's just a different approach. Rather than hybridize this thing, they go with the turbocharged engine, which is becoming very common. And your transmission, what is it? Well, it's an 8-speed automatic, is standard fare. And it seems to be very well matched with this powertrain. As you can see, it is transversely mounted, so what's that tell you? Well, this is primarily a front drive vehicle, but we do have a drive shaft running from the transmission back to the rear so that you have a four-wheel drive situation. This particular model, the Heritage, is also based on the Badlands Bronco Sport, which is a little more off-road oriented, so it's a little more rugged, and you have a much more versatile all-wheel drive system that has a way of tuning things so that you can pretty much select whatever terrain you're on, and it will adjust your ratios and your engine response and other things accordingly, especially in things like snow. That's a real good thing to have, especially with a turbocharged engine. So with that, let's move on to other hard parts. Now this right here, more than any other component of the car, the Bronco Sport in this case, will help get you down the trail through the mud and through the snow better than any other single component, and that is the tire. This is a very popular all-terrain tire. That, matter of fact, I've got some of these on some of my vehicles. I just have so many vehicles. Well, one, but the other, well, there's the other one too. It has one. But anyway, this is a very, very good off-road tire. And it is the Falken Wild Peak AT3W, which is, W stands for winter, I think. I don't know. But anyway, it's very, very well situated it drives, first of all, it drives great on the pavement, no question about that. It's numbers as far as how it does in the rain and how it does with stopping in the dry and in the rain, and then the snow numbers and everything else. It's a very, very versatile, tough tire, and it's a good choice for just about any vehicle that actually sees duty off-road. You got these old wheels on here that I don't know if those are steel or aluminum, but they do have a little cat logo in. Oh, wait a minute, that's a Bronco. From a distance, I swear it looks like a cat. But no, this feels like it's aluminum, but it looks steel. There's so much of this Heritage version that wants to pay homage to the original. So a lot of it looks like the original, but is actually better than what the original had. Because when you have aluminum, you have a lower unsprung weight and all kinds of things. But as we go past our logo, and right here it should say good humor, but it doesn't. We go back with our 105-inch wheelbase to the rear of the vehicle. And unlike at this price point, almost everybody has a power liftgate. This one does not. That's manual. It works. You push your button, it goes up. But I'm kind of surprised that it's not power assisted, just because that's very popular right now. The cargo area, as you can see, is not huge. It gets considerably larger when you fold the seat backs in the second row forward. It's a 60-40 arrangement. And it also has this nice durable plastic on here with this particular issue. And look at there, you know what that is? That is a full-size spare tire. See, they really are encouraging you, if you want, to go off-road because you really have the kit you need to do it. And having a full-size spare on a four-wheel drive vehicle is great stuff. You can get by okay with a temporary in most circumstances, but it's not near as assuring as having just another tire that's just like the rest of the tires that you can throw on there should you have difficulty off-road, pop a bead or run over some kind of thorn bush that's got enormous claws on it that just rips your tire to bits. But what else is also interesting to me is this bumper looks like a big old steel bumper. It's not. It's made out of the same kind of stuff that most car bumpers are made out of these days, but it looks, for all get out, like a truck bumper almost, and which gives it a little bit of, you got a little bit of a sill here you can step up on if you're loading stuff on the roof and that kind of thing. So they thought about that, and I think that's a real good choice what they've done with this particular bumper. It may not be as tough as it looks, but how many things in life are when you get right down to it. You have some wonderful little things here. You have a 400-watt maximum AC plug right there. So if your engine's on, it's switched on, you can plug in a pretty substantial regular power tool or whatever, and it's very useful. What do we have here? Well, this thing does all kinds of stuff. It folds out, I think. I'm not sure. If you get to do this, you just have your ordinary, this is what they call their cargo management system, I believe. But you have a shelf here so you can put things on shelves should you be a shelf person. And that's nice. And look at here, you even got a little ruler right there for your work adjustments. And I think, I don't know how this works. It looks like it just pops up. Oh, they're gonna hate me at Ford for not finding out. Maybe I'll find out and tell you about it later. Maybe I'll even demonstrate it. Yeah, probably not. But here we have our, this turns on our light somewhere. I don't see no light back here, anywhere. But there must be one. Is that it? Is that the light right there? And the light right here? Huh. I think there's all kinds of things going on. Yeah, there we go. It's LED, and you hit that button, and there you got these very nice, excellent cargo lights. That's good. I like that. Like it. And what else? You got this cubby over here that is good for, well, it's a cubby. And you have another one over here. This is also very similar to the other cubby. So there you go. It's very compact back here. There's not a whole lot of cargo room with the rear seats deployed. But fold those seats and you got a lot of cargo space. You got to remember, this is a compact vehicle. It's not huge. You just, you know, I know how you people are. You're always going to want to put more stuff in it than you think you have room for. And then you won't have room for it because you were right. And then you'll have to put it on the roof, and it has a nice roof rack, so there you go. But anyway, the Sport is, I have to hand it to them because considering you're looking at basically a modified Escape, it does really look like the new Bronco family. They've really given it a signature from a styling standpoint that really stands out and does look, in the heritage form anyway, a lot like the original. And I know they spent a lot of time on that because, as you can remember, when they relaunched the Bronco name just a couple of years ago, they spent a lot of money on it. They really, really worked on it. They plan on selling a lot of these things. So there we are. Can I get you a dreamsicle? I'll ask the driver. In the beginning, there was darkness. And then the graphics appeared. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Boy, if there's one thing that Ford loves to do, it loves to share with you some graphics. Look at that, isn't that something? It's just a car, but you think you're at a movie theater, don't you? Mm-hmm. Well, that's the fun of it all. on your Bronco Sport Heritage Edition, the one that looks just like an ice cream truck. You know, I was out there visiting with one of my neighbors, and they had very powerful opinions about the appearance of this vehicle. I won't go into detail, but you know how I love it when people are honest, and they'll come right out and say something when they think something's pretty or something's handsome or something's ugly. Well, anyway, I'll put it this way. Let me rephrase what my friend said. She said it evokes a strong response when I look at it. Well, anyway, I like it. I still say it looks like an ice cream truck, and I am so okay with that. And this is but one trim level. It is a trim level that is, I believe, tightly associated with one other trim level, which I believe the Badlands, or I don't know. We're heritage here, but the fact of the matter is, this is a Bronco Sport that is ready for your off-road activities. It has all the bells and whistles to help you with that, which we'll go into in a minute. But one of the things I do like about this heritage thing is we have some beautiful analog mechanical instruments, speedometer and tachometer. And in the middle of that is a very, very clear and concise. Ford's always been very good, at least the last 10 years, with their graphics. Their graphics are beautiful. Not as good as BMW. I still think they have the best, but very, very good. But you have all kinds of choices you can make in this particular computer area, and there's one of them included a tilt meter and a lift meter and a meter. What else do we have? We have no active trailer at the time, but there is all kinds of trailer goodness. There's not, of course, I can't remember right off the bat what the trailer towing capacity is. I want to say 3,500 pounds, but I'm not positive, because this is a small vehicle. And it doesn't have like a integrated trailer brake or anything like that, but it is equipped to tow a small trailer, and it has some of Ford's magical black box magic to help you with that. So far we've been getting with 86 miles or so I've driven, or is it more than that? 90 miles. 23.5 miles per gallon, which is an average that is pretty average for this class of vehicle. There's a lot of normally aspirated crossover SUV type unit body machines like this one that don't have turbocharged engines but have normally aspirated engines that get as good or better mileage. They don't have the horsepower and the torque numbers this does, but they have plenty of, as far as I'm concerned, they have all they need. And so my bottom line here is this is not anything outstanding in the fuel economy realm at all, but it's not really totally aimed towards that. I think if there's one thing this vehicle's aimed towards, trying to be a versatile little SUV. That's what they're after. So what else do we have here? Well, here's your navigation as far as all the different things you can do with this central display, and you can even well, that's not as interesting as I thought it was going to be, but it's very easy to access a bunch of different little screens to help you on your way. And while we're at this screen, this is important, your drive modes. Now what we have here is GOAT. And what is GOAT, you may ask? Well, it's Ford's way of saying go over any terrain. They don't have ice cream as one of their terrains, but this is what they do have. We're currently set on normal, and you have eco, naturally, green, always green. Then you have sport, always red. Then you have slippery, which is, I think, kind of ice, water. I think they call it rain, that kind of thing. Then we have mud and ruts, which changes a number of parameters. And it's interesting when you do that, you go to Mud and Ruts and you get your front camera. This has a 360-degree camera array. So when you go to Mud and Ruts, you get this front camera on to help navigate you through your mud and your ruts. Clever, huh? And it also, as you can see right there, it locks up your front and back. Well, not your front and back, excuse me. You have a differential that is between the front wheels and the back wheels. And normally, like in an economy mode, this thing is just trucking along with front wheel drive only. And the rear, for all intents and purposes, the rear drivetrain is disconnected to help with fuel economy, less drag, that sort of thing. But this locks the differential between the front and the rear for off-road going, and you have a switch down here that you can do the same thing with. But when you put it into this mode, the famous, what we like to call your mud and rut, it locks that for you. Then we go to sand. What happens with sand? Well, it also locks your center differential and probably does a little bit of changing with your transmission ratios and engine response, that kind of thing. Anything that'll make it easier to navigate sand. And then we have rock crawling. Well, I don't need to tell you how intense that's going to be, because this is like your maximum off-road mode. And what it does, it locks the center differential. It also locks the rear differential, which is really impressive on a little compact vehicle like this. It also turns off your traction control. So sometimes you need a little bit of wheel spin in order to get some of the other stuff to work, to tell you the truth. And again, all you got to do is put it in the mode, and it'll lock up all these various systems for you, and give you that front camera so you can see where you're going a little bit better in front of the hood on this thing is really high. I'm not sure why they did that. Kind of reminds me of the new Tundra. The hood just seems unusually high. And the bad thing about that is it restricts your front view as far as what is directly in front of the vehicle. Well, this screen takes care of that for you. So clever, huh? All right. Now we'll go back. Let's go back to normal. There we go. So that's your that beautiful little screen there. Now over to the right, our central touchscreen is kind of small by today's standards, but in my opinion, it's a very good size for the size of this interior. Works out quite nicely, actually. And it's very good graphics and very clear, and it's fairly easy to navigate. If I had a complaint, and you know I just love to complain, a number of the buttons, especially when I'm doing things like radio presets and stuff like that, they take quite a push in order to get them to work. I'm not sure why that is exactly. If I was to go to, why don't I go to, how can I go to, can I just turn it, by the way, you can turn this on anytime you want, I think, as long as you're moving at a slow speed, that front camera, I really like that. I'm not sure exactly where my, I guess you have to, there we go. You got to put your finger on it in order to get it to do stuff. And there's your audio, but you can't have your audio muted, apparently. What happens if I do this?
What we saw was the FBI and
nothing, that is just adjusting your sound. Okay. Well, anyway, if I had a problem with this touchscreen, it's just that. It takes a lot of, sometimes you got to really put your finger in there like you're poking a turtle or something like that. You got to really push. But it does have the miracle of all miracles. It does have knobs here for your tuning and for your volume, which I love. That's such a nice thing to have. All this other stuff here, this of course is your engine auto stop, which of course turns the engine off when you set it alight for, provided the conditions are right, like the vehicle's warmed up and everything. To save fuel, it'll shut the engine down and it fires right back up when you release the brakes. Works very well on this vehicle. It doesn't take an abnormally long time for it to crank. I've had a few, folks, believe it or not. They don't take a long time to crank, but you feel like every time it does it, it's restarting the engine, that it's wearing out your starter. And this does not have that feeling about it, which is good. So anyway, we have a storage area here for sandwiches. And then down here we have your climate control system, which is very, very much in keeping with how everybody else is doing it. It seems to be the only area of standardization that exists anymore. But it's very easy to operate. You got your auto mode, and you can also, in addition to going to a manual mode, you have your controls down here for your heated seats. Voila. Not ventilated, just heated. And you also had heated steering for your colder climes and for that time of year. We drop down further, we have our QI charger for our telephone, which seems to work well. You have a USB-C and a USB-A port. You have a 12-volt power source. And then as we come down, we come into controversy. The shifter on this is a dial. And some people like it, some people don't. I'm okay with it, but I see no real clear advantage to it at all, but it works fine. When I was doing some turning around on a trail a couple of days ago, it works fine. I mean, because I was frequently having to go from drive to reverse and whatever. But to go to your manual mode, you do that right there. You put it in your drive, push the button, and now you're in manual mode, and you have your paddle shifters. And it'll only go up to second and then blink if you're sitting still. So you can start out in second gear if you want, I think. Yeah, you can. Let's do this, let's do this, let's do this. Yeah, you can start out in second. There's many advantages to doing that. It's like if you're, well, I don't know what it does as far as your goat mode, but I'm going to back up now. Whee! Look at all that rain. My God, how did that happen? Well, I'll tell you how it happened. They said it wouldn't. But anyway, that's your shifter, and I'm not in love with the new dial shifters, and they're all over the place. A lot of manufacturers are using them. I don't really see any advantage to it, but I'm sure there are a few. One of which, as far as believe it or not, in severe crash situations, if you have an ordinary shifter up here, they have been known to have caused injury in some people, but it's extremely rare. And I just like having a little bit more substantial shifter, but whatever, each to his own. Here's the goat control I mentioned earlier, and here we have your center differential lock right there, then you have your rear differential lock right there, then your traction control deactivation, and your downhill falling down the cliff mode that it's supposed to help stop that happening to you. So there you go. Wow, what about our console? Very deep and very roomy. I'll tell you something else that's great. The glove box. Glove box on this vehicle, I mentioned it. I normally don't talk about glove boxes, but this one's nice and big. I have that would be an iPad 2 in there, and damn, plenty of room for it. I like that. I like storage. It's like one of the things in my personal vehicle I hate is there's just not enough storage areas. And Ford did a great job with that on this vehicle. Your seats are very comfortable, and you have good, adequate lateral support right here. And you have a pocket right here for putting your flashlight or whatever you'd like to put there. Like I said, not ventilated, but heated. And overall, very comfortable. They have a little bit of flatness to them that will help accommodate larger people. But overall, I give them very high marks. It's a very comfortable seat. And speaking of seats, well, wait, not one thing at a time here. We got a few more things to look at. Over here, we, of course, have your lights. And this particular mode also lets you select whether or not you want your automatic dimming functionality functional. And that's how we open our rear hatch right now. It just pops it. There is no power lift gate on this vehicle, even though it cost $11 million. Matter of fact, what does it cost? Hang on, I got that right. Don't I have it right here? What did I do with it? Oh man. I thought I had my Monroney right handy. Oh, I do. Hang on. I know where it is. Don't you just love it when you have to just sit here and wait for people to do stuff? There she is. All right, how much? We'll go over this again towards the end, at the end. We are at $46,400. That's a lot of money for a vehicle that does not have a... well, by the way, what kind of seats are these? Let's see, interior, zipper pocket. Huh. Well, I don't know what the hell. Yeah, there are zipper pockets on this thing. That's nice. Isn't that nice? That's nice. The exterior is called Robin's Eggs Blue, as mentioned before. It's perforated plaid leather trim brown. Okay. So that's perforated leather is what that is. With your logo. They're big on logos in this vehicle. All right, so enough of this front area. We've gone over everything. Cruise controls are over here. Radio and central screen navigation is there. Nothing else really of note or unusual or weird in this vehicle, which is nice because it becomes familiar right away. Now as the rain comes pouring down, let's go check out that rear seat, shall we? Come, let us fight the rain and enter. All right, we don't have the widest door opening in the world, nor do we have the biggest angle from the door as it opens. So access is not a number one. Let me fix that up there for you. Now then, how's our room in the seat of backness? Well, the headroom is amazing. This is 10-gallon hat territory. Wow. There's a lot of headroom. Legroom is about average to less than average. Footroom is fine. You have a moderate tunnel. The seat is... There's a real common foible with all compact SUVs. The rear seat tends to be on the flat side. This is no different. But one of the reasons the seats are as flat as they are is access. So you can get in and slide across. That's really the reason why. Because they can do anything as far as the contours of the seat and other things. But you have plenty of headroom. As you can see, the belt line is kind of high. But you still have plenty of good visibility out the side. And how far is this window open here? Is that it? Oh, that's only about 75%. I don't like that. I like my 100%ers. There's my favorite windows. But room is excuse me, is adequate, but definitely beaten by a lot of the other compact SUVs in the class. I mean, that's just the way it is. It just doesn't have as much room as, at least it doesn't feel that way. Now, the thing is, a lot of times when you look at the pure empirical data, where they've actually measured stuff, it's fine, but it's so much of this is just the impression of when you're sitting in the rear seat. Now, what does it have going for it besides them? Well, what does it? Oh, it's no, I haven't said anything really complimentary yet. Well, look at these map lights. These map lights are fantastic. You don't get any better than that. That's absolutely great. And how is our all-important armrest? It's all importantly comfortable. It's at a good angle. Everything. That's all you want in a armrest. Excellent, excellent. And this one thing I got to say about this leather is it does feel like it's very, very substantial, very sturdy. You also have these zipper pockets for zipping in items that you need to keep back here, like your CDs for your CD player that you no longer own. You can just put them back there and they'll just sit there. You know, that's something you can do for yourself. So anyway, not the best rear seat in the compact class, that's for sure. But then again, it is a compact vehicle, and it's a vehicle that is more than something that, let me compare it to something like the Honda CR-V. The CR-V is much more oriented towards just carrying people comfortably on a regular road. And this thing is a little more focused at taking people out on a trail somewhere. It's just sort of biased in that direction. And in order to do that, as far as the wheelbase length and ground clearance and everything else they wanted to do with this, I think that's what probably compromises the rear seat room a little bit. It's just the overall architecture of the Bronco Sport, which is similar to the Bronco. It's a strange vehicle in that regard. The only thing I can compare it to, you can compare, for example, the Jeep Renegade compact SUV to the Jeep Wrangler. They're completely different in terms, one's a unit body compact and the other is a body on frame rugged off-roader. Same thing with the Bronco. The Bronco is a body on frame, hardcore, serious off-roader, Wrangler type vehicle, and the Bronco Sport is much more oriented towards, let's just say, urban living. It's a unibody construction thing. And I'd love to have, I wish I had a Renegade here at the same time, because both of those both the vehicles I'm mentioning, if you get the Trailhawk version of the Jeep Renegade, it's very off-road capable in terms of it's got the tires, the ground clearance, the traction control mode, all that stuff. Same thing here with the Bronco Sport Heritage. It's focused towards that. So there you go. It's kind of a unique realm we've had in terms of the last few years. Everybody's popping up with a little bit more off-road fortification for their compact SUVs, like the Wilderness Edition of the Subarus and the TRD off-road version of the RAV4, etc., etc. So that's where we're going with this. Is it the right vehicle for you? Well, watch on, learn, examine, evaluate. Well, they've done a lot of repaving, and then it really brings out the good and the bad of how your vehicle handles, and also how your vehicle absorbs bumps. Because this thing is again, it's like the way it looks. You'd look at it and say, well, it's probably a little top heavy, and there's some corner lean, and there is, just by its architecture. But you would also say, well, that doesn't look like it would necessarily ride super smooth, and it doesn't. It rides perfectly acceptably. I'd say it's riding fairly typical for the range to a point, and then it has a little bit of additional stiffness in it to keep it more rigid during off-road work. But it's not overly impressive, I'll put it that way. And you can't blame the tires for that either, because my experience with these particular Falcon Wild Peaks, especially the non-LT version, the standard P-metric version, which is what this vehicle has, does a nice job of bump absorption. Everything is a compromise. You got to have tires that are stiff enough to handle things like rocks and rugged terrain for a vehicle like this that will be going into rugged terrain while probably not rock crawling or anything like that, or extreme situations, but certainly down trails that are not paved, that may have all kinds of irregularities, bumps, and little rocks, you see. Not the great big boulder. Boulder is for Bronco. Little rock is for Bronco Sport. That's how that works. See, there's some body lean here. It's not bad. It's not excessive, but it is. And I'd love to, this is something that'll be a blast to drive back to back with a Ford Escape, because since they have the same basic underpinnings, I would assume the Escape in all of its driving manners and things are probably a lot more car-like than this vehicle is. As we now venture to the type of road I'm talking about. This is a road that you may have seen before in some of my reviews. I tend to go out on this road because it's a good test for all kinds of things, actually. If I go further down it, which I never do, it can get pretty hairy in terms of some very deep, nasty mud holes that people get stuck in a lot. But I never take these vehicles there because I don't have the time or effort available to me to get stuck. Now, this being what we're going to do now, we're going to switch our driving modes. Let's go to, let's turn on the GOAT and go with Echo Sport Slippery Mud Ruts. That's what we need here. We're in mud rut mode now. Mud rut mode. And it is telling me that my front and rear axles are locked together. Boy, that's a bump right there. Now what's going bad now with this, normally this trail you can see everything in it very clearly, but with all the grass that's grown up, I have no idea what I'm running over here, so I have to be very careful with a lot of this. As you can see, our front camera is on, which is really nice. That's very helpful. That's right in front of the front bumper. And I'm coming up on a big rock here. Let's see if I can see. Yeah, I can see it. Here I come to it. Here it comes. There it is. Now I'm going over it. Yep. Fortunately, it's not a big deal. It just looks like it is. And off we go. The normal place I turn around is going to be a real trip, because I can't see very well here. We'll be careful not to scrape up the ice cream truck. I don't want that happening. Suspension's nice. It's firm enough that you feel like you have a good deal of control over this stuff, so you can go nice and slow when you need to and go over obstacles. Oh, I don't like the sound of that. Without a great deal of drama. Boy, I'm just amazed at how much this grass has grown, because I thought this would still be more like a trail, but it really isn't now. Now what am I going to do over here? Oh, I go there, go there. I tell you. Come on, little Bronco. There we go. I like that little growly noise it makes. I hope I'm not scratching this thing up. I may have to get the polish out. Hey. Listen to that. That's, you know what that is? That is these absolutely hellish sticker bushes. Oh, well, hopefully. You know, it does have a real nice paint job on it. It looks like it's durable. We're going to find out. it's damp. And here's something that's interesting. I say, here's fun. The rear suspension, and you know how I love my rear suspensions, on this Bronco Sport Heritage Edition, has this extremely bright colored lower link here that I believe is made out of some kind of aluminum. I'm not positive about that. It's kind of an interesting looking subject. But the rest of the links on it look like to be, they are in fact made of a regular type of steel. Here's your lower link here and a cross link. It's kind of a unique suspension this thing has. Again, we have a situation where we have a unit body, no real truck frame on it. You see, it's just a big box. But the suspension, front and back, has its own cradle that it rides on, this thing right here. And to that is affixed all the necessary suspension components to help isolate it from the body itself. And it does a good job of that. It's not the greatest ride in the world, to be honest with you. It depends on what you're after. This vehicle is a little better equipped to go off-road than others in the class, such as your ordinary CRVs or your ordinary RAV4s. Of course, like I say, everybody is now coming out with their own version of a little bit more trail-worthy compact SUVs. Everybody's doing it. And one of the most versatile in that regard, best equipped, is the Jeep Renegade, which has all kinds of things on it, just like this. I mean, you got your tow hooks and a little bit better ground clearance and all kinds of things. And most importantly, bigger and more off-road worthy tires, as does this Heritage Edition. But here's our rear differential, and you can see the drive shaft up in there. And then there's some bits of protection here. Now, what this is right here, I don't think that's the fuel tank. It could be, but it looks way too small to be the fuel tank, but it's got to be because, oh, there it is. Fuel tank is over on the other side. But you got quite a bit of protection underneath here. And it's not the kind of thing you go over rocks, but you can go over a little bit softer substrate, worry-free, because it's pretty well protected. As far as the suspension action is concerned, there's a good bit of travel. This wheel here, right tire is still on the ground, and this one's in more of a compressed situation. So, and especially here in the back, another thing they've done with this vehicle is they've put some what I would consider to be a very low rear overhang. So your approach and departure, same at the front, so the approach and departure angles are better than a lot of the vehicles out there. Somebody here has adjusted the rear suspension here, or either that. You see this stuff, by the way, if you don't know what it is, a lot of times when something is serviced, or sometimes it's even done when they're assembling it at the factory, but this is just a particular technician will mark it when that's actually been tightened to the proper torque and that kind of thing. And I first learned that years ago when I had a test BMW motorcycle that had to have the cooling fans replaced because of a weird grease problem where grease was seeping down in there and shorting out the cooling fan, and then the bike would overheat. So when it was being, it was a recall, and when it was being taken care of, the technician, after they installed it on the outside bolts, they would mark them to let everybody know that particular operation had been done. I don't know if that's what's going on here at all, but probably not. Could be just an assembly thing. But as you can see, it has a formidable look to it in terms of being able to handle off-road situations, and it seems to pretty well. The only bad thing about these kind of vehicles is they encourage people to go off-road because they're better equipped to do so, but a lot of times people will push it a little far, and because they get the impression after they've driven it off-road a few times, I could take this thing anywhere. Well, this Bronco Sport, just like it's like a pack mule, I can do whatever. And I mean, Ford doesn't help matters much when they call their mode adjustment system for driving off-road GOAT, go over absolutely any terrain.
You know, but that's encourage you to do so and think twice before you go just over anything. But there you go, plenty of ground clearance, and it's a good little off-roader to a point.
Well, what do you know? So our 2023 Heritage Limited 4x4 Bronco Sport has a base price of $44,656 and with options came to $46,400. You got 21 miles per gallon city, 26 highways, your EPA ratings. We got about 22.4.
I'll tell you, one of the things this Bronco Sport Heritage Edition is good for is getting out in the woods and cooking your weenie. You know, I got two of them here, actually. Two weenies. And they got these lights up here on this tailgate that are real nice for this sort of activity. And this is a good off-road vehicle to a point. Something I got to tell you about this Bronco, because this is one of the off-road versions of the Bronco Sport. And it's like a gateway drug. It's just enough to get you into real trouble if you're not careful. Because while it is very capable and has a lot of very excellent go over any terrain modes to it, it's not as big an off-roader as you might think, in which case that's where the trouble could come in if you're not careful. It could get you way out in the middle of nowhere when you can get stuck and isolated and stuff like that, just because it's very capable to a point. So with all off-road type vehicles, this is a very unique compact SUV. There's a full class of these things that are not designed to go off-road as much as this one is, but at the same time, this is not a serious off-road vehicle. You may think it is. It's not. It's extremely good for bad weather, for trails that are fairly improved, and for snow, excellent choice. But the thing about a Bronco, he'll turn on you. You'll be riding along and try to do something fancy, and well, things happen. So that's my only caveat with this vehicle, is it's got a lot of nice features to it. It seems to have a decent drivetrain, although the gas mileage is nothing to write home about. But just be careful that you don't overdo it with this vehicle, because it's going to tempt you into that with its excellent Falcon tires and its multiple terrain selection system and its ground clearance. All these wonderful things that will get you down the trail to a certain point. But then you can get into trouble. So that's all I'm saying. That's the only problem I have with this vehicle, is that I think some people will buy it thinking they can go right up the side of Mount Rushmore in it, and you can't. But for most things, to use a compact SUV, it'll be great for that. It'll be fine. It's a good urban machine, that's for sure. And perfectly equipped for some light off-roading. Just don't overdo it. Remember what I said? That's good advice for life in general. Just don't overdo it, okay? You guys take it easy out there. Look after one another, and we'll see you next time. And I think these are done. Woo! Hear them frogs? My God, there's so many of them.
Gesalbte wollen, sein viel ein Eigen.